It's a quiet night in Mock Town when the Bellamy pirates receive their warning. Their laughter at the foolish dreamer they robbed of gold is interrupted by a man in town who has seen a bounty poster. A bounty poster for 100 million berry man, who the Bellamy pirates had crossed that day. To Captain Bellamy, this is nothing more than another joke. The pirate they fought didn't even look like he could throw a punch. And that pirate has arrived. Today we'll be discussing the paneling of Luffy vs. Bellamy, one of my favorite fights in the entire series. It's full of great paneling in both the build-up to the fight and especially once the action starts. We all remember how that glorious final page looks. I hope you enjoy, let's get right into it. The speech bubble of Luffy's roar takes up half the panel with its volume. The panel of the outside right before implies that the shout didn't come from inside the bar, and the fact that the speech bubble is hanging above then implies that the noise is coming from somewhere high up, which lets us smoothly transition into the next page, where the surprised pirates are looking up not just at the source of the sound, but at the space the speech bubble was in. All of this makes the sequence more fluid and interesting to follow. Bellamy walking outside is shown from above, both because it's an interesting shot and a hint at where Luffy is watching him from. The zoom in stays in that perspective, but puts the focus on Bellamy's emotions, letting us transition around to Bellamy's perspective, looking up at Luffy. I love this panel, there is so much going on in it. It sets up a powerful mood for us to linger in, of course, a duel at midnight. It directs the eye across the important elements, from Luffy to Bellamy. Luffy being so small makes it feel like we're squinting to see him up there, just as Bellamy is. And this panel sets up a relatively consistent pattern we see in the next few pages, Bellamy taking up more panel space than Luffy. I've talked before about how the amount of page space a character takes up is used to convey, among other things, their level of power. That's not a hard rule, and here we break it on purpose to match the dramatic irony of the fight. Bellamy appears bigger just as he thinks he's facing someone weak, while the reader knows Luffy is far stronger. Even in this later panel, where Luffy is in the foreground, he stands at an angle that makes him feel narrow and slight, while Bellamy has those wide shoulders. The panel of Bellamy looking up also sets up their relative positions to each other, and to the environment. This is important for three reasons. It allows the fight to have a ton of movement using the town as an arena, as it climbs up and then falls back down, making it more fun and dynamic to read. It lets the chapter show off Bellamy's powers, and reminds us of what they are, through him jumping up to the roof. And it ties into the narrative of the fight, as Luffy gets knocked down to the bottom, further playing into Bellamy's overconfidence before he knocks Bellamy down further. That was a lot for one panel, so let's keep moving. The close-ups on the next page, again looking at Luffy from below and Bellamy from above, pulls the focus back from their positions and toward the characters' feelings. Remember, in One Piece fights, it's not just about whose punches are hitting who, it's about how the characters feel. The transition between the next two panels is really clever. We go from another high angle down to a low one. This makes it feel like we're moving downward, and just like the direction that the eye moves in, this is something that can be aligned with motion. In this case, it aligns with the motion of Bellamy compressing his spring legs. I think most people intuitively understand how a spring works, so when we see an image like this, we feel the potential energy ready to burst out. I find this kind of thing interesting, because Bellamy is going to shoot upwards, but that's been enhanced, not by making us feel the upward motion when it happens, but by making us feel the downward motion that happens right before it, through the camera angle. I've decided to call this concept reverse motion, mostly because it's something I've been trying to find a way to describe for a lot of videos now that Bellamy's powers really exemplify. It also applies all the time when Luffy uses his powers because again, something stretches back before it stretches forward. In a general sense, even when a fighter isn't made of rubber or springs, an action can feel more satisfying by having a reverse action occur right before it. That's why it works that someone pulls a fist back before they punch forward. Just like on the page before, there are a few clever things going on at once in the bottom panel. Bellamy is a show-off, not a serious fighter, and he especially loves to show off his devil fruit. That's shown best through how he's literally doing an unnecessary backflip in this panel, which also happens to put his spring legs right towards us at the camera. And of course, there's a great line for the eye to follow as it reads. There's more great eye direction on the next page too. taking us across Luffy's view towards Bellamy twice. It also shows the positions they'll be in when Bellamy makes the first real move in the fight. What I really like is how it hides Luffy's face from us at first, as he says that yeah, he is in a position to make demands. The panel feels a little ambiguous, making us ask the question, what is Luffy thinking here? What did he mean when he said that? Then it can answer that ambiguous feeling with the next panel, showing his resolute expression as he declares that he's doing this for his friends. There's not as much to say about the next page, but I do like how the first two panels are looking at Luffy from the perspective of the audience, and how it shows Luffy with no expression on his face, not even looking at them. It reinforces the theme we got during Luffy's first encounter with Bellamy, and enhances the sense of irony that everyone here thinks they're winning as they laugh when they really aren't. Just before the action begins, it shows Luffy and Bellamy in parallel shots. Using the exact same shot twice in a row emphasizes the differences between them. In this case, not just the size of their builds, but the difference in their attitudes. Bellamy flipping backwards, along with being another show-off move, aligns with the eye as it travels across the panel. The camera angle makes sure we can see all four elements of this beat: Bellamy, the spot he jumped off of, Luffy, and the falling roof. Picking an interesting camera angle isn't just about doing something weird and unconventional, it's about making sure that we can see everything that matters. What's really clever is that the two sides of this panel are pointing towards where they're going to be in the next panels. The falling roof is sliding towards the bottom right panel where it keeps falling in that direction, and Bellamy is flipping towards the bottom left panel where he lands against a wall. His landing gives us another great example of reverse motion, this time just with regular eye direction rather than a camera angle change. The eye moves with him from the right side of the page to the left as he flies through the air and presses into the wall. We feel his weight pressing into the springs, compressing them, building up all of that potential energy that can burst out on the next page. All of that reverse motion setup makes Bellamy shooting from left to right feel natural, even though this goes against the direction things normally move on a manga page. The tight, horizontal panels emphasize the speed, while also showing that Luffy is calm and in control. He might not do anything in this panel, but showing his expression makes sure the reader understands that Bellamy is not too fast for him. This is actually an interesting case, because this page might want us to read the left panel before the right one. After all, that way makes our eye align with Bellamy shooting toward Luffy, and it is going diagonally downward this way. Whether or not it's going for that, it gets away with this potential rule break because the panels do work in either order. Luffy darting out of Bellamy's way aligns really nicely not just with the way the eye is traveling, but all the way towards the impact in the final panel. What I really like about this page is how consistent it is about the character positions, both in-world and on the page. Bellamy is always coming in toward Luffy from the left, and Luffy darting downward is coming from his position to the right in a straight line, and doesn't overlap anything that might make it confusing. This is the kind of thing that might seem simple, but needs to be executed right to make the action as clear as possible. One of the reasons the action is clear here is that it uses the same camera angle twice, but that can be a double-edged sword. I've seen many action manga repeat camera angles twice in a row to make it easier to follow the movements, but this leads to a flat, repetitive feeling. One Piece avoids this by having these two close-ups of Bellamy and Luffy in between them, giving it a proper ebb and flow. The next page might be one of the greatest examples of directing the eye with diagonal motion that I have ever seen. We've just seen Bellamy burst away from the wall on the last page, so we understand from his pose and the compressed springs that he's about to do it again. The diagonal slant to the panels prepares us to follow him diagonally, and that diagonal flow is then extended into the large panel. It makes the eye zigzag down, bouncing between building to building, just as Bellamy is physically doing, and all of the paths eventually lead us towards the next focal point of the image, Luffy. All of these motions going in all kinds of directions manage to align into one consistent composition. The warped perspective not only frames Luffy between the buildings beautifully, but it makes it feel like the walls are closing into him, like he's getting trapped, just as Bellamy is trying to trap him with his elaborate, chaotic attack. Chaos is the name of the game in the next panel. Not just in the tight panel of crisscrossed lines following Bellamy's movement while Luffy is unfazed, but in how from panel to panel, we keep changing camera angle and subject and location. It's meant to be overwhelming and chaotic. I remember watching this in the anime for the first time. I remember how between all of the noise and the laughter, Luffy asked a quiet question: "Do I know how to throw a punch?" That same feeling is conveyed through the paneling itself here, in how the panel of Luffy's question is literally hiding under all of the chaos. It's so simple and plain that it's easy to skip past it. Bellamy doesn't even realize that Luffy said something. It's a page of chaos ending with simple right-to-left motion as Bellamy closes in toward Luffy, and in an action so simple yet so powerful, Luffy punches through the chaos. This is one of my favorite pages in One Piece. This moment, this scene, is one of the reasons I love One Piece today. We came into this page with leftward momentum. That was, interrupted. Sure, we can follow the line of Bellamy's body, but it gets bent downward, just as he was bent downward by the punch. The impact is enhanced by both the curved perspective and by the way Bellamy's body is bent around it. When someone takes a punch in One Piece, you can see it in their body. The page doesn't just feel like Luffy punched him down, it feels like something moving incredibly fast was forced downward by an even more powerful force. It's baked into the composition. Yet the impact effect isn't huge, it isn't pointing in every direction. It's tight and controlled, just as Luffy's punch was. After all, he didn't even use his devil fruit. Bellamy doesn't deserve to learn that Luffy has one. My favorite part of the page is the panel below. Not just the fact that there's a fist-shaped dent in Bellamy's face, although that is very satisfying, but it's what it does for the flow. The eye travels from right to left along Bellamy's body as it goes across the page, and yet right around when it gets to Luffy, we notice that there's a panel below and our eye travels down towards that. That makes it so the eye literally moves in the direction that Bellamy was flying in when it suddenly gets redirected downward. Lots of artists can draw a big full-page spread, but to include an extra panel in that spread specifically to pull the eye toward it in the direction of the impact, that, my friends, is great paneling. Thanks for listening, everyone. I recently reached 1,000 subscribers and actually went well over it, and that is in large part thanks to a shout out I got from the channel Puff the Pirate in a video he released on Luffy's character design. That is a great video, and if you're watching my channel but don't know him, go check it out. While you're still here though, make sure you do subscribe, like the video, and comment if there are any more past chapters you want me to cover. I can't promise I'll take every suggestion, but I do consider all of them. Have a great week.